Okay, Mech Commander, you've just got assigned your first lance, and as your senior officer here, it is my responsibility you do not disgrace the Great House, and you do not send 4 mech warriors into the ranks of the dispossessed. So we're going to be looking at some starting tactics. I don't even really want to say 101, more kind of fundamentals that regardless of the theater of warfare that you are operating in with regard to Battletech, these forces, these tactica, these points are always in play. So we're going to try and distill it down to about 4 or 5 videos. I'm going to push these up to my channel here. You'll find them in the Battletech archive if you're coming to this through a Google search or some sort of YouTube recommendation playlist. Number 1. I'm assuming right now 4 mechs, but obviously this can scale up if you've got 5, 6, 8, really whatever number we're talking about. Rule number 1. Always stick together. Make sure that your 4 mechs, and again, we're just talking about a traditional lance right now just to kind of grasp this tactica. You never want to be out of the field of fire, out of the range of fire of your mechs. So maybe you put your assault mech in the center. To your left, you'll have a heavy mech. To your right, you'll have a medium mech, and that light mech, if we're looking at a traditional lance, will maybe float a little bit on the left or the right side. The idea is you're about 3 or 4 hexes away from each other. And as you move, you are advancing as a group. Now, the reason for this, very simply, field of fire. Battletech, being a war game, utilizing dice, there's this idea that a number of things have to happen in the game before you can score a good damage hit. And I define a good damage hit, meaning hitting a part of the opposing mech somewhere where it's going to cripple it or begin to cripple it on there. How we do this is simply by having the maximum number of weapons that are in range, in play on any given turn. Much harder to do in the fog of war and on the table when your opponent is looking to push back at you. And of course, that's before we layer on mission objectives. And I'm not saying it's easy, but if you are not working together as a group, that becomes impossible. That becomes impossible to do. There's this idea that, distilling it down, first I have to hit you. So I have to be in range. I roll to hit. There's going to be a number of modifiers. Am I walking? Am I running? Are we at short, medium, long? How many hexes did you move? Is there terrain in the way? Do you have cover on there? That's the first part. First I have to hit. Then based on your facing, usually it's center torso to center torso, but sometimes I might be attacking on the side. That's going to determine where I hit. And then randomly, assuming inner sphere, no tech computer called shots for the moment, or against an immobilized mech, I roll on the hit chart to see where I hit. So there's a lot of kind of what-ifs, a lot of what I call dice gates, meaning your dice have to pass through these various gates to get where you're going to be. If you have one weapon, you might roll legendary. It's Battletech. You could roll 12s. But one weapon means, especially at the longer ranges with a lot of modifiers stacking against you, you're probably going to miss. But if I have 4, 5, or 6 weapons stacking, those are 4, 5, or 6 chances to hit. This idea of redundancy. 3 is some, 2 is 1, 1 is none. So if I have 3 mechs, let's look at a lance that I'm playing around with here. If I take a Cyclops as my command assault mech, I take an archer as my heavy, I'm taking a hunchback as my medium, and I'm taking a commando as my light. If I'm working together as a group, that means with the long-range 20s, I've got together the archer and the 20 pack on the Cyclops. We're looking at stock mechs here, no variants. That projecting forward means more or less, once my Cyclops is in range, if I'm hovering about 3 or 4 hexes, once that Cyclops is in range, you're also ready to start being tagged by my archer on there. That means I'm going to be able to focus fire. This leads to this idea of projecting a threat bubble. Picture the hex map. Picture my mechs on there. They're going to radiate out based on the range bands. Literally this bubble, this space on the table. Well, it's not quite a bubble because it's not 360. I can move 360 by facing and moving, but at some point I'm going to have to lock in, and then it's going to be on that radius that radiates out. Anything that comes into there is going to get tagged, is going to get lit up with multiple weapons. As I get closer, well, now we're going to start utilizing the medium lasers on the Hunchback. We're going to start utilizing the medium lasers on the other mechs, on the Archer. When we get really close, the Autocannon 20. The idea is multiple mechs are focusing on whatever comes into that field of view. Okay, Fritz, sometimes you have to break the mold, right? We're going to take that commando, and we're going to go commando, and we're going to send it up the side of the table or do something interesting on there. If I have to, 99.99% of the time, I do not want to break formation. You need to stick together. But occasionally there might be opportunities that present itself. I don't know, mission objectives, or you expose a long-range missile carrier, or something is working up, or I'm going to send out the light mech. Then if I move that light mech away, I still need to make sure that it's at least covered, at least in range of some of my other weapons. So if we're looking at the Cyclops and the Archer in this example, I break off my commando to go rogue, to do whatever. I need to make sure as I move it that it at least stays in the field of fire, the range of the Cyclops LRM-20 and the Archer LRM-20s. So this way, when my commando engages whatever it's going out there to engage with its weapons, which are primarily short-ranged weapons, I at least, yes, it's at long range, yes, there's going to be modifiers, I at least have 20, 40, 60 LRMs raining down on there, pushing it that way out there. So we want to stick together. We want to be 3 or 4 hexes, preferably side by side, not back to back, not single file on there. If there's air support, I might spread out a little bit more, and I might stagger myself, one towards the front, one towards the back, one towards the front, one towards the back, so I don't get strafed or bombed. There are situations where you disperse a little bit wide, you come in a little bit closer, but essentially projecting a unified front with weapons and pushing forward. Absolutely core tactica to running your Battletech Lance. And if I've got 2 Lances, I'm going to do that with 2 Lances. If I've got vehicles in play, another great example would be I often run Shreks, PPC carriers on there. I'll have infantry working with them, goblins in support, put the Shreks in the middle, flanked by the goblins. I've got a ring of infantry, everybody advancing and pushing and moving forward, sticking together.